Laci Peterson is still at the center of one of the most notable murder cases in America 20 years later. The 27-year-old was reported missing on Christmas Eve in 2002. If you're familiar with the case, you know she was 8 months pregnant, and her husband Scott was eventually convicted of double murder. He's serving a life sentence but maintains his innocence. This Live Now and Then special takes a look at the media's role in how a young woman from Modesto, California became a household name. We'll start with this report from KTVU in San Francisco the day after Christmas that year, just hours after Laci had been reported missing.
Time right now, 8 o'clock, and we begin this hour with a holiday mystery in the Central Valley. An intense search is underway for a missing Modesto woman who is 8 months pregnant. She vanished on Christmas Eve. KTVU Channel 2 reporter Ted Rollins joins us with a live report now from Modesto. Ted?
Tori and Mark, this is a real mystery. Friends and family of this young woman, Laci Peterson, are gathering at the family home. You can see that they've been putting up flyers in the neighborhood here for the last day and a half. They've also been canvassing a park, which is nearby this area, where Laci was last seen on Christmas Eve about 9:30 in the morning. Her husband, Scott, had gone to the Bay Area to go fishing. When he returned, Laci was nowhere to be found.
They were doing awesome, looking very forward to having their baby. He saw her at 9:30 in the morning before he went fishing, and shortly thereafter, she went on her walk, and the neighbor found the dog at 10:30 and put it in the backyard. No one has seen her since.
Now, Laci's purse was inside the family home. The dog also was in the backyard with the leash still on. Police say they have a couple credible witnesses that say they saw Laci walking her dog in this park that's just a block away from the house. A full search was conducted yesterday of the park area and the neighborhood, but police say at this point there simply is no trace of this missing woman.
Keeping all angles open right now, but from talking to the family and friends of the family who are been extremely cooperative and helpful in this investigation, this is completely out of character for her and her lifestyle.
Laci is a white female, 5'1", 140 pounds. Again, she is 8 months pregnant. Brown hair. She was last seen wearing a white long-sleeve shirt and black pants. A $25,000 reward has been posted in this case for any information leading to her safe return. Live in Modesto, Ted Rollins, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
All right, Ted, and we'll update this story on all of our newscasts throughout the day. Thanks.
Laci's disappearance happened about 90 miles from that news station, not a proximity of something that would normally be covered, but the quietness of the holidays brought the station to the scene anyway, and the fascination with the case began to grow. Countless volunteers joined in the search efforts. A command center was set up with tables and flyers and even telephones. Well, soon people unconnected with the case were invested. Laci Peterson was a familiar name across the country, having made headlines as far as New York City. Check out this report from Fox 5 New York on the latest in the search for Laci just a few weeks after her disappearance.
Laci Peterson's husband says that he's gone fishing, or he had gone fishing at least. Now he's gone hunting for his missing 8-month pregnant wife. Fox's Jane Yamamoto has the latest on the search for Laci, which has expanded to Los Angeles.
It's important to extend the search area.
Mobbed by the media, 30-year-old Scott Peterson greets volunteers here in the Southland, joining the search to find his missing wife, Laci, who was 8 months pregnant when she vanished on Christmas Eve.
It's been 26 days, and we feel that whoever has her could be anywhere.
Searching for answers in Laci's disappearance, the Peterson family set up a day-long volunteer center in a Westwood hotel, passing out flyers, hoping for her safe return.
She's hurting deeper than any of us could imagine. We just hope that, she's safe and somewhere.
Scott says he last saw her on Christmas Eve when he left to go fishing. The 30-year-old became the center of attention when the investigation focused on his personal life. Allegations of an extramarital affair and reports that he took out a $250,000 life insurance policy on his wife.
And I know my brother has nothing to do with Laci's disappearance. He loves her, we all love her, we want her back, and we want our new baby.
A baby boy, her due date February 10th, the same day this volunteer is expecting her baby. Even though she doesn't know Laci, she says it breaks her heart watching what this family is going through.
The closer I get to my due date, the closer she is to hers, and I'm praying for a safe return for her.
And Joe Peterson says it's taking a toll on his baby brother.
He's lost a lot of weight. He's obviously extremely worried about his wife and his child. He's got good days and bad days.
And that was Fox reporter Jane Yamamoto reporting.
As the affinity for Laci grew, so did the animosity towards Scott. So much so that a judge ruled he couldn't get a fair trial in his hometown and moved his trial nearly 2 hours away. This report from Fox News at the time details how both Scott and Laci's family had to readjust to a totally different courthouse and routine.
Scott Peterson's parents arrived early, in part to become better acquainted with the security procedures at the new venue for their son's double murder trial. Also on hand, the family of Laci Peterson. Sharon Rocha and Ron Gransky must use the front door here after nearly 10 months of using a back door to avoid cameras in Modesto. But despite all the publicity, Peterson's first court appearance in Redwood City lasted just about a half hour and ended with another delay. Defense attorney Mark Garrigus is starting another murder trial in Pasadena this week. It's expected to last 10 days, and the judge in that case is adamant about starting on time.
As soon as I'm done with the case in Pasadena, I expect that I'll be back up here, as I indicated to the judge, within 24 hours of that case to start this case.
Both sides have agreed to have retired Alameda County Judge Alfred DeLucchi oversee the case, and his first order of business was to ban cameras from the courtroom. No video or still cameras during any part of the trial, so we'll have to rely on sketches like these and eyewitness reports from those in the courtroom. Peterson's next court appearance is a week from today. Lawyers will finalize a briefing schedule and pick a date for the trial to get going. The consensus is a few weeks, around mid-February. Then there will be a week or two of pretrial motions, followed by a month or so of jury selection, and then an estimated 6 months for the trial itself. One reason for that timeline, both sides have agreed to a 4-day court week, Monday through Thursday, so lawyers and witnesses from out of town can have long weekends at home. In Redwood City, California, Claudia Cowan, Fox News.
For 5 months, Scott's trial played out inside a packed but closed courtroom. As you heard, no cameras were allowed, so the public relied on the media to tell them what happened. But a daily lottery also gave away a handful of seats in the public gallery. Strangers lined up hoping to get inside to see and hear what was happening for themselves as Peterson was ultimately convicted. Check out the crowd waiting for the drawing on the day of Scott's sentencing.
Yes, sir. All right. Some first preliminary instructions for those that are new here. Please be sure that you're looking at the right side of your coupon. We've had people look at the wrong side. So look at the printed side, the printed numbers, not the handwritten numbers. On that third time, you'll hear me say gone. When I say gone, don't bother coming up with your ticket because you're gone. There are about 126 public seats today available. 26, all right? The courtroom is courtroom 2M, located at the other end of the building. Go through security upstairs, the escalator, to the far end of the hall. There'll be a place up there for you to queue up. When we call the numbers today, please have your driver's license out with you and give us the coupon. Once you get your ticket, you can go inside, or anybody can go inside afterwards, but the halls will be crowded.
First number, the last 4 digits, 9388.
That was a quiet one.
I know. Member of the public.
Hungry?
No,
Oh,
chores.
good.
Chores. Family chores.
Family chores.
Thank you. Your number 1? 9389.
Have a little luck on my side. You've been down here so many times too in the past and didn't get out.
Give me one. Doors will open at 4. Yeah, doors will open at 9.
I got time. Thank you.
Well, joining us to speak about the media's role in this case is a reporter who covered the story some 20 years ago. Let's watch.
Laci Peterson is at the center of one of the most notable murders in America, and I'm joined by crime reporter Henry Lee to break this all down for us. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Stephanie.
You know, Laci Peterson was 27 when she went missing and 8 months pregnant. What do you remember about that time frame and her disappearance?
Well, Christmas time in 2002, at any time, any year, usually there's not a lot of news. And so when a pregnant woman disappears all of a sudden, it doesn't seem to be normal for the area or anywhere in the region, that clearly attracts attention. And so all the reporters naturally were drawn to that story in Modesto in Christmas time 2002.
Yeah, and what was it like as a journalist during this time and something of such national and even international popularity?
It had all the aspects of a story that would definitely go nationally. You have a good-looking couple, woman who's pregnant, apparently while walking the dog, was the initial story, disappears without a trace. It's Christmas time. She's expecting a baby. And then you have the curious actions of her husband, Scott Peterson, who doesn't seem to be acting in what in a normal fashion. So his behavior obviously drew attention. Suspicion immediately went to him, but he professes innocence. So these are a lot of questions that needed to be answered at that time.
Yeah, do you remember when Scott Peterson actually started to become a suspect in the case?
Well, I think it was probably fairly soon, although Modesto police weren't saying so publicly. The natural inclination is to look at the people closest to a missing person. That would be the boyfriend or husband or any family members or coworkers. And so I think the suspicion was thrown on him fairly quickly, but the cops wouldn't say so publicly because they had to keep an open mind. But certainly his behavior didn't help matters.
Well, and then affairs came into light as well, correct?
Right. When Amber Fry came forward, this was a woman that he had been having an affair with. You know, that was a bombshell because she ultimately recorded conversations on the phone and that were turned over to the police. But this was a bombshell because he told Amber this will be the first Christmas without my wife before Laci ever disappeared. So it was damning circumstantial evidence suggesting that at least Scott may have been considering to kill Laci.
Yeah, and let's talk about this going from being a missing person case to a homicide case.
Right. In this case, Modesto police were operating under the theory that she was missing, and then it became what you call a no-body homicide, when all of someone's life activities suddenly stop. There's no checking account activity, there's no visa activity, there's no sightings. Then they operate under the belief that this body has been hidden somewhere, whether it's buried or thrown overboard. And in this case, they quickly hone in on their belief that this is a homicide case, that Laci would not return home alive, let alone her unborn son.
And you covered some of this pre-trial coverage. What do you remember about that time and your time covering this?
Yeah, the attorneys fought tooth and nail. I remember clearly watching Mark Garagos, who was a talking head on all the networks, talking about this case and vociferously having the side of the defense saying, you know what, it's very possible he didn't do it. And lo and behold, Scott Peterson hired him to be his attorney. At the preliminary hearing in Modesto, I handled every single day of that for the newspaper I was with. It was a hard-fought attempt by the defense not to hold Scott Peterson over for trial, but ultimately he was held over for trial, and because of pretrial publicity, the case was actually transferred to San Mateo County.
Let's talk about the case itself. Is there a moment during your time reporting, is there a moment that stands out to you?
Well, this certainly has had many twists and turns. I'm still stunned that I am here covering the same case, 22 years later. I mean, the legal system is winding its way through the courts. We all know that he was sentenced to death, but that was overturned and now transferred to life without possibility of parole. And he's obviously still fighting for his innocence. So there's a lot of attempts made by Scott and his defense team, which is now the Los Angeles Innocence Project, trying to have post-conviction evidence tested. One specific piece that a San Mateo County judge has allowed for retesting is a piece of duct tape found on Laci's body during her autopsy. So the defense is trying to argue there might be someone else's DNA found on that duct tape, and if there is, that might be the person who is responsible and not Scott. But on the other side, you have some of the original Modesto, Stanislaus County DAs, the same ones I saw in court back in 2003, are there today. And this year, stunned to see them so many years later. They are, adamantly saying there is enough evidence that shows and proves that Scott Peterson is where he is supposed to be, which is in prison.
Yeah, and you make a good point. You talked about your time covering some of this post-trial. Can you explain to me as a journalist what that was like?
Yeah, right. I mean, it was amazing. It was almost surreal to see the same people you see on TV in person in court. You see Scott's parents, you see his family there every single day, and to see the same sisters, brothers in court today, these in this current year, so many years later, it's just a reminder. They are adamantly, steadfastly believing that their loved one is wrongly accused, and so it's just a reminder that once you think a case is done and over, there are appeals, there are lab tests, there are retesting of the evidence, and many appeals that can be done, and he has not given up yet.
Let's also talk about media's impact on this case. I mean, you look at some of this footage. There were literally lottery systems to get into the courtroom to even watch the trial. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of media interest, and obviously members of the public have had to wait in line to try to get a coveted seat in court. You have to get there early, and this is just a reminder of how big, how national this case has gotten over the years, and no one has forgotten about it. That, you had people cheering outside the courthouse in Redwood City when the jury convicted him. There were cheers so loud that the family members inside the courtroom could hear. And it's just a testament to how much this case has just attracted so much attention, just because of all those factors that melded together. Good-looking couple, pregnant woman gone missing around Christmas time. A lot of reasons for people to pay attention.
Yeah, I was going to pivot to that. Why do you think that this garnered so much national attention?
There's just a lot of sympathy for Laci. She was pregnant, 8 months pregnant, about to give birth, having some challenges there. Her first child, Scott Peterson presented himself to be, a loving husband, certainly outwardly, but when you go beyond the veneer, you learn a lot of the details that he may not be the person that he presented himself to be. And so when news of his affair broke with Amber Frey, people immediately say, well, that cements his guilt. But his family says, no, just because you have an affair doesn't mean you're guilty. And so that's what the family still believes today. So there's a lot of factors that have just caught people's attention, and it continues to do so after so many years.
Yeah, do you think that this case has shaped how missing person cases are handled now going forward? Do you think that white women are still more focused on than women of color in missing person cases? What's your take on that?
Well, I've covered many, many cases involving murders, kidnapping, sexual assaults, and I think there is some talk of the white woman syndrome, where there seems to be more attention given by the media and the public on white women. But I think in general, the police in the Bay Area and beyond, they have learned from this case and others. If it seems to be A and seems to be B, that does not mean that it's a closed case. And there was a case I covered in Vallejo, case what some people call the Gone Girl case, where they assumed that this missing woman, kidnapped woman, was in cahoots with her boyfriend, making it all up. It turned out it was a stranger who did abduct her. So I think in this day and age, police are realizing, just don't take things at face value. And that goes for the public and the media as well.
Do you think that there's an aspect of this case that you had wished was covered more so than it was?
Well, this Scott Peterson case was covered every single case, every single twist and turn, from the burglary across the street from Laci and Scott's home. That was what, and continues to be, a bone of contention by the defense. They believe that the burglars across the street may be responsible for her kidnapping and murder. And so in that respect, we pay attention to every single twist and turn of the case. I can tell you that the Innocence Project has been looking, excuse me, at every single piece of evidence that was presented to try to find evidence that he was not responsible.
Does it surprise you that this is still covered in so much detail today?
Yes and no. I know a lot of people today, excuse me, I know a lot of folks today who are younger than me have no idea who the Scott Peterson case is or who he was. And so, but then again, veterans like myself, we immediately know why this case transformed the Bay Area and transfixed the nation. And so it just depends on where you are. I think people will remember this case for a long time. We're still standing by to see how it ends.
Before I let you go, anything else that you can remember notably that, you know, during your time covering this significant case?
Oh boy, I can just, so many things have changed. I know that one of the prosecutors in the case became a judge. Another prosecutor became the DA. You know, officers who were in charge of the investigation have retired. So much time has passed, and I think I'm struck by the fact that Laci will be forever the age she was when she died. Connor would have been a young man now, her unborn son, and the sadness that you see reflected in Sharon Rocha, Laci's mom, and family members is just a reminder. You know, Laci is gone. And according to the prosecution, her killer is where he needs to be. But that remaining, you know, the defense fight in court for Scott's innocence is continuing, and it remains to be seen how that will end.
And now, more than 20 years later, Laci Peterson's case continues to captivate America. As reporter Henry Lee said, younger audiences are just now learning what happened, and those already familiar with the case are still invested in seeing Scott's fight for innocence play out. Though none of it will, of course, bring back Laci or their son, Connor. From Live Now and Then, I'm Jeanne Francine. Thanks for watching.